Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Index Podcast, where the three of us come together to discuss on-chain metrics, chart crimes, and happenings in the crypto industry viewed through the perspective of data. And today I have with me Denning, on-chain corgi at Flashbots.
Hi.
Hildobby, resident data housewife at Dragonfly.
Hello, everyone.
Today we got a special guest, which is Lorenz, master of labels at growthepie.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I am Boxer, the community powerhouse at Dune. Before we get into it, nothing we say here should be relied upon as legal, financial, investment, tax, or even life advice, and we are acting independently of our respective professional roles. And with that, really excited to have Lorenz from Grow the Pie here. I think high level, we're just going to go through, okay, what is Grow the Pie in general? Then Lorenz is currently spearheading the Open Labels initiative, which I think is super exciting. And then we're also going to talk about, okay, like what even is the public good? Why should we support public good? With Grow the Pie kind of being the specific implementation of a public good here. With that, I think Lorenz is maybe one of the hidden figures in crypto data, since all of his work just gets translated into Grow the Pie and not kind of publicly is on a Dune dashboard. So maybe Lorenz, if you want to kind of tell us your journey, like how did you get here?
I think it all actually starts 2022 in Amsterdam, where I met Boxer in person. And funny enough, we were sitting outside of the event and somehow got talking about data and blockchain. And really, half a year later, I was in the blockchain game and working on data. So thanks, Boxer, for getting me into blockchain data. And now I'm the research lead at Grow the Pie. And at Grow the Pie, we try to do analytics on all things in the Ethereum ecosystem with a special focus on the layer 2 scaling solution space. And I've been with Grow the Pie since day one, first part-time, but now I'm leading the research and doing all the digging into the data.
2 years ago, yeah. We just randomly met somewhere outside. I think there was like the German connection, of course. Just got talking. I think we were at some hackathon, which was like a deploy an NFT on some chain or whatever. I really struggled to set up my terminal. I still remember that. It was absolutely horrible. I think Lorenz actually managed to deploy some like ugly drawing to Polygon. The impact the small things can make, and I think one of many nerd snaps I've done, but this one has been very impactful, I feel like. Very happy about how that went down. Why is Grow the Pie called the Grow the Pie? Like maybe let's start there to start digging into this.
The idea behind Grow the Pie, the name, is actually pretty simple. So the idea here is we are growing the pie, not just through one organization, but through a bunch of different entities acting all together. So even though there might be like 10, 20 different layer 2s building somewhat similar scaling solutions, we believe that the fact that there are so many and everyone does slightly different design or whatever, we are actually growing the pie together, and everyone can basically win and get part of the pie and be happy and scale. So we see this whole Ethereum layer 2 space in the same sense. So rather than competing, I feel like if we come together and all work on it and collaborate in this space, we can really make this space so much bigger and much more open. So that was literally where the name was born out from. And we're trying to really try to make this impact visible through the Grow the Pie, and that's where the name was born from.
Much aligned.
Yeah, very aligned. This is also like I think one Dev Connect had like the infinite garden like analogy or whatever, which is like, okay, like Ethereum is this garden, but it's infinite. Like we need to scale it. I don't know. It's a good name actually. It's really memorable. Like all the others are like Dep Radar and Token Flow, and I don't know, all of these like something like data related, and it's like they're all so interchangeably. I don't know. Grow the Pie is very memorable. I like it. So yeah, maybe with that, Dobby, if you can throw up the website and we can kind of talk. Okay, like what is Grow the Pie actually measuring? What is the data? And then we can maybe kind of pick up where crypto Twitter left off last week.
So
Yeah.
this is the main landing page of Grow the Pie. We can go through a bunch of the pages. I think there's some that are more currently relevant than others, probably, and those change over times. And maybe we could go through economics or block space. Which one should we start with? Maybe
I've always, just to insert, I've always been using Grow the Pie as a source of truth for, like all the metrics for L2s, like who's highest TVL, who has the most active users. I've actually built some like trivia from just those. And it's just to, like people actually oftentimes may not know, like actually, base arbitrons like TVL, like difference, etc.
I've used Grow the Pie a lot as well. It is also a source of truth, and it's kind of in this area of things where I could redo some of it on Dune, but the amount of chains and everything that's gathered and like keeping it all up to date, it's like a whole big ass job on its own. And once you got the ball rolling and it's really big, it's hard to replicate somewhere else. We can also talk about how you guys are open source. So obviously, I could technically replicate if I wanted to, but I wouldn't see much of the point. But yeah, I use it all the time to come up with some metrics. I recently actually helped publish some metrics for Ethereum Investors Club, and I think like the biggest website I reference is Grow the Pie in there. Given that scaling is such a big topic right now, and I feel like in Ethereum land, that's what people are interested of.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out. I think with the point with like it's so difficult to replicate, it is true because like every layer 2 has different ways of like producing data. I mean, sure, you have all the different EVMs, they are fairly the same, but as soon as you go into like Starknet or I don't know, some derive or orderly, it becomes quickly so complicated. And I guess also hats off to Dune. I feel like the company basically listing all these different chains with different tables. I feel like we are spending a lot of time just making sure we can even compare data sets to each other, and I feel like that's so difficult, especially how all these different layer 2s do things different.
Yeah, it's a struggle. Our blockchain team is absolutely. It's not. You would think it's very scalable. You're just like, oh, let's just add another EVM. But then it's like, oh, they have like slightly different columns, and like, how does the gas fee calculation work here? And like, I don't know. There's just like these minute differences where it's like it's all EVMs, but then it's like, okay, like there's something different here and something different there, and in the end, it actually gets very complicated. So yeah, I really appreciate this kind of like standard work of knowledge that you guys are producing, which is like this one reliable place where you can just look these things up, and you're not like, oh, let me pull up this Dune dashboard and then let me look at DeFi Llama and look at, I don't know, L2 and like all of these other places, but rather it's like, okay, we're just gonna like nicely synthesize and present this information in one space. I think that's really valuable. Maybe if you could like I think you must have like a high level overview of the methodology, or like not the methodology, but rather you're not kind of like producing all of this data firsthand, right? Like you must also just be using the DeFi Llama API for like TVL stuff and shit like that.
Yeah, so you're totally right. We're also pulling in already aggregated data, but generally we actually index everything ourselves. So every chain you have listed on Grow the Pie, we have raw transaction data as huge tables in our backend, and from that we aggregate. So while sure the total value is secured, we pull these data, for example, from DeFi Llama. Sorry, not from DeFi Llama, from Layer 2 Beat, and stablecoin market cap we pull from other sources. But all these quantitative metrics on our website, we completely aggregate ourselves. And yeah, we try to also make sure to double check this data with each layer 2 team to really make sure that it's actually correct.
I'm curious about L2, with what you were showing there. I want to know, like, what's the L2 that makes the most money, and what's the one that's losing the most money?
Yeah, that's really a hot debate at the moment. So we created this economic overview page, and here you can really see, well, first of all, to explain what you can see here, what we did at growthepie, and we got inspired from Kofi with his rollup economics for this dashboard. So shout out to him here. We're basically looking at all the on-chain transactions we can find. So all the different settlement transactions the layer 2s initiate on Ethereum layer 1 to settle their chain. We sum up the fees they pay for that and put them here into the cost column. So you can see the costs are separated into layer 1 costs, which would be the Ethereum execution costs, and into the blob costs. And the blob costs is the beacon chain. How much do they pay for the blobs? And now if we take the sum of all the transactions on layer 2, we can actually find out how much these chains are making, so how much revenues they have. And through a simple revenue minus cost, we can actually calculate how much profit they make. Profit in a sense of on-chain profit. So it does not include any staffing, server costs, and so on. But you can really see how profitable these layer 2s probably are, with profit margins above 80% most of the times. And yeah, this is, of course, a lot of discussion, and I feel like a lot of people see these layer 2s as extractive. Yeah.
Except Tyco and the Polygon ZK EVM. Why do they have such a negative margin?
Yeah, so Tyco, because it's a based rollup, they have to pay much more fees for settling their states to Ethereum. And that's why they have so much layer 1 transactions they have to send, which are expensive, and therefore they are spending more on these layer 1 transactions that they actually take in through layer 2 transactions. So this is basically more of like a design choice by the layer 2, or how they are built, which oftentimes determines how profitable they are.
Just to explain on the base rollup, the reason they're more expensive is because you got to submit on basically every block, since that's finality on L1, and therefore, while base can bundle like 6 blobs at a time into one submission, those are more expensive because it's one at a time, and a lot of them are also user submitted. Anyone can come and submit blobs, so it varies a lot more, and it's not necessarily optimized by one sequencer like it can be on other chains.
Right. I think to add on that, I've seen some research post on ETH Research where some researchers looked into all the Tyco sequencers profits, and there are some PGA going on where there are multiple sequencers and they're both trying to submit for the next block, and the person who had a slightly higher ETH gas priority fee will land and get the prover rewards, as I understand. And but the Tyco sequencer, the sequencer from the Tyco team, still submits all the time they have to keep the liveness, and so they're basically paying a lot of the transaction fee but not getting the rewards. So I've seen the numbers, they're losing $500,000 every 2 weeks.
That's the problem with base rollups, is you have to bootstrap them just for liveness. So usually the only way, if it wasn't live before, is to submit empty blobs, basically, which is what Tyco was doing, with the hopes that eventually blobs are full and there's kind of incentives or MEV for users to submit and then be more profitable. But the original bootstrapping period, for now, can only be at a loss if it started as a base rollup in the first place.
Can we quickly explain what a base, why does a based rollup have this property of you need to submit something every block?
Because
and maybe in comparison to something like base or the optimism stack.
I'm probably gonna get some of this wrong, but I think it's because the way it works is that finality is determined as at the L1 layer. So when blobs go live, whereas for L2s, there's also some centralized sequencer that also has some finality. There's some nuances here in the words, but hopefully that does make sense. But it's just that finality is on L1 versus L2, and it's that's how I would explain it.
I didn't dig into like how their node specs look like or anything, but my understanding is that like they don't, when they build a Tyco block, it's not like they have a chain that's storing all those blocks. They have to post those blocks basically into like Ethereum mempool and trying to submit into an Ethereum block. So like if you miss a Ethereum block, then you're even less than 12-second liveness as a chain. You basically set it on L1, and so you have to basically try to get into the L1 block every time.
So wait, is Tyco as slow as Ethereum in terms of block time at the moment?
Yes, it is constrained by Ethereum's block time.
So I submit a transaction on Tyco. That transaction actually has to be included inside of a block on Ethereum, and then the L2 somehow understands that, or the sequencer of the L2, or the block builder of the L2. What would be the sequencer? The sequencer of the L2 then picks that up from the L1 and actually includes the block on the L2. So it's like we've essentially bought block space with a lot of economic security because it is like very much secured by the L1. But okay, we lose a lot, which is okay. We no longer just need to kind of post the proofs or whatever inside of the blob space of Ethereum, but rather we rely on the execution is also happens on L1, so we need to pay a lot more. And also to keep up the liveness, we post the blob every block and not kind of like just if we have how many transactions can you fit, or like how many megabytes, kilobytes, how many kilobytes can you fit in a blob at the moment?
128.
Yeah.
128. I've seen like the Tyco block oftentimes right now looks like 120 transactions, 130 transactions.
Yeah, but there's based on different compression algos as well. It varies slightly between blockchains. Obviously, they're all optimizing as much as they can, but it's not exactly 128 because that's compressed input, not just input.
Okay, but I think that tangent put aside, we're not an ETH research podcast. We're actually just interested in the high level economics here. Yeah, so why are we talking about this? I think on the screen we have the data of the last year, and then if we just look at this, we can see that like very high level base kind of earns 100 million in the last year for a cost of only 11.4 million. And Dobby, maybe if you scroll up to only get like the last 30 days of data. Wait, why does it? Oh. I think if we talk about these numbers, because then we already have things that are like only blob relevant. I think for however the blob upgrade, was that more than 1 year ago at this point?
Not yet, I think. I think almost.
Okay. So like sure. if we look at the more recent data, it's actually become more. It's going to be more relevant in terms of like percentages and like if you want to forward cast these things. I mean, blob space is also now more competitive, so like the costs are also going up, but everything's always in flux. But if we look at the last month, we're at least going to have more relevant data. So if we just want to put ballparks here, Base has made 12.95 million revenue, which is the gas fees that people are paying to get their transaction included in Base. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
And then on the other side, Base has spent $1.11 million to post these transactions to Blobs, and there's also L1 cost here. My Ethereum knowledge is currently struggling. Why is there L1 costs?
So you still have like the blobs. That's where all the raw transactions go. So they get compressed and put into the blobs, and then you still have to finalize the state. And these finalizations of these states, they still happen on Ethereum because there you need some sort of execution with a smart contract.
That makes sense.
So you can go up and select maybe 1 year And then if you open up one of the folders, for example, Arbitrum or Base, whatever, you can actually clearly see where EIP 4844 went live. Because with the launch of EIP 4844, the costs significantly dropped. And why is that? Because now all of a sudden, these chains did not have to publish the data, the raw transaction data, to the Ethereum layer 1 execution layer, but rather to the blobs, which were basically free at that point. So you can really see this massive drop once EIP 4844 went live, and the revenue or like the profit margins going up significantly.
Right. So around March 15th, which is what I roughly remember, seems to be when that was.
Just to get our audio listeners on the path here. Base was paying. It seems like something like 300,000 up to 500,000. This is daily. So per day, Base was paying 500,000.
Arbitron.
Arbitrum was paying $500,000 to Ethereum mainnet, and thereby also I don't know, just spiking up gas costs. Just in general, this was like really good for the ETH burn mechanism, because this is actually this is fees paid to the network, so that's good. But then we created Blob Space, and Blob Space is essentially free. So now this is actually a huge debate in the Ethereum community, right? Like, did we maybe misprice Blob Space here, and shouldn't the L2s have kind of like, are we going to implement tariffs? Like, is this our way forward? But I think until we have that discussion, just to kind of like complete the data walkthrough, go back to the 30 days, please, just to like get the ballpark numbers, because I think like talking about numbers in an empty space is always a bit difficult. Arbitrum in the last 30 days paid 3 million, 500,000 in costs. Then yeah, I mean, that is $2.57 million in kind of, is this the last 30 days? Yeah. In the last 30 days, which is not too shabby. But then if we kind of move down the list, if we look at things like, I mean, Base and Arbitrum, obviously the most like Base is kind of has emerged as one of the winners, or the winner of like the L2, the whole L2 ecosystem. Arbitrum, obviously Hyperliquid, is kind of keeping that chain alive. I don't know much else of what's happening there, and we can kind of look, we can hopefully take a look at the block space utilization metrics a bit later. But then like immediately, if we kind of go through the third place here, which is OP mainnet, they're only making 700K in revenue against Base's 12 million. And their revenue is or like their profit is 610,000. So like we can clearly see here there's a power law, which is okay. Base takes most of this. Arbitrum takes a little bit of the revenue or the profits, and also the costs, of course. I think that's like the picture. And then like if we really want to like complete the picture, we can go all the way down to something like, I don't know, Scroll, which does 140K in revenue, or then even like Polygon ZK EVM, which only does 32K in revenue. And then we can kind of, there's two anomalies on this, which is everyone kind of making a profit, or like at least breaking even, because it's just like, okay, the users are paying fees here, and thereby like the rollup obviously doesn't need to subsidize it. But then Tyco, which is the whole, like we just talked about the base rollup and why that is, and then also Polygon ZK EVM, which I am not sure why that would be the case.
I actually have some questions on Polygon ZK EVM. So first off, Tyco seems to have been profitable the last 4 days, so congrats, that's nice. And Polygon ZK EVM is an interesting one because there's multiple differences versus the rest, and the main one being that it's the only one out of this list that's stuck to Ethereum calldata over using Blobs or another old DA layer, which right now is basically just Celestia, with others going live later. Did you guys know why that is? I think I was talking to some Polygon guys, and they told me about finality and stuff, but I just didn't really get it. Maybe you guys know what is going on, or maybe I'm missing something. There's a reason why it's superior. Because maybe you could argue it could be gas cost eventually down the line if like blobs prices were to skyrocket, but then there's already like OP stacked chains that have a system where you can balance whenever you want between call data and blobs to like minimize costs as demand goes through. So yeah, do you guys know why Polygon zkVM is doing this?
I have no idea. I'm also
Okay.
wondering that every single day. Like, they're paying millions every month or every year unnecessarily in fees.
Yeah.
I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me.
Oh,
because
they're not even using blobs.
no, it's
Exactly.
call data.
All
Yeah,
data.
Yeah, they're
that's why
using
it's
call data.
unprofitable. If they were to use
Maybe
blobs, they
all
would be
like
profitable.
in one of their million layoffs, maybe they fired all the engineers that would be able to implement this. I'm sorry, Polygon.
The reasons seemed to be ideological, but I just didn't understand the ideology, I guess. So I can't tell you much more. But that's what it seemed to me like when I was talking to someone from the team about it. Yeah, I need to find. I don't know. We need to find this out because I'm curious.
On the metrics you guys mentioned here, like the ratio between L1 cost versus blob, how do we interpret, like, say, because I see a bunch of outliers, like for example WordCoin has 90%, WordCoin has 92% are all paid to blobs, meaning they have a lot of data to handle, or so they need a lot of blob space. And maybe when, like, for example, I think Tyco was showing a much higher like L1 cost. Maybe that means when the high L1 cost is higher, those change. I guess Tyco is a outlier, but like when the L2 wants to post more frequently, they will have to post a lot of like the state confirmation thing where like they have to pay a lot like L1 cost, versus like if they are a data heavy chain, they will pay a lot more for blobs. Or they could be a very slow chain in terms of finality. I'm curious, Lorenz, how do you guys read into this like ratio?
Yeah, so it always depends on the architecture, but I think in general, the more transactions these chain actually go through or like finalize, the more blob data do they need, and therefore they also pay more for blobs, right? But the layer one cost is pretty much stable, considering a large increase in layer two transactions. So for that, that's more like a fixed cost, you could basically almost call it. And the blobs are more like the variable that scale with the layer two transactions.
I see.
So the more the layer twos actually confirm in layer two transactions or sequence, the more blob fees they have, but the layer one costs basically stay the same.
So how do
That's
I reason about, like, for example, Base and WorldCoin both have like 92, 94% fee that they paid are from blobs, indicating that they are the highest activity. But meanwhile, WorldCoin's total revenue is like only 500,000 for, I guess this is last 30 days. And Base is like 30, yeah, Base is 13 million.
Yeah, so that is a little bit more specific. So in Base, there are a lot of MEV bots because there's a lot of DeFi activity, and they bid up the fees on the sequencer to get in
I
at
see.
certain blocks for their MEV extraction. And on Wall Chain, there is not a lot of MEV extraction, meaning there's not a lot of bots that pay high fees. And it's more like on Wall Chain, there are more of not high value transactions that simply send normal gas fees, and therefore they actually can't take in as much profit, the sequencer, compared to Base. I think that's basically the difference.
I see. The revenue comes mostly from the gas priority parts from the L2. I see.
Yes, so the priority fee is definitely very important for the bots to land their transactions as soon as possible. And yeah, on Base, it's just way higher than on other chains.
If we only look at Word and Base, you can clearly see how their priority fee level is significantly different. I think that explains why the total revenue number was so different, even yet like they both indicate that had a high blob percentage was higher. activity.
Yeah, base L2 block space is more valuable, seen as more valuable than worlds, because I guess it's fuller. Blocks are fuller.
No, it's
And
just like all the blocks on world are really homogeneous. Like it's just like people minting the eyeballs. Or I don't know, but like I would assume, and then like in the next transaction dumping their whatever $50 that they got for their eyeballs for USDC, and sending it to Coinbase so they can buy bread or whatever.
but if like
but
if
so
blocks
like
were
no
not full,
no but no, there's no priority fees. Like even you don't care if your eyeballs get minted now or in 10 seconds or in 20 seconds. Like it's just like there's no incentive to really like send the transaction fast. So like because there's no MEV, because there's no kind of time. I mean, there's probably some like, how do you say this, like time criticality or time sensitivity, but the time sensitivity is a lot lower, and there might be like zero MEV revenue to be made on World Chain because like I don't know, if we pull up the DEX volumes, it's probably like whatever, like a few million a day, which is probably all like just trading World to stables, and then maybe a bit for gas costs or whatever. So like this intuitively just makes sense without like having actually like deeply looked into the data.
Well,
But that would be my thesis.
I disagree. I think so. Boxer, do you have the WorldCoin app? They actually have a lot of apps on their world chain. Like
Oh.
I just got demoed yesterday at a dinner in New York, and during they showed us there's a lot of like. So now if I pull up on my phone, it has all
Won't
types
be
of
able to see
apps
that.
like AI app. There's social app. There's gaming app. Business, finance.
They're going for the distribution play. That's interesting.
yeah.
So they're like, okay, we have a lot of uniquely identified users through their eyeballs, which are real humans. So we can actually, you can deploy these apps to real people, and that might be that actually is like I can see why developers would want to build on that chain, and if they actually have
Yeah.
users and have active users,
Yeah.
of course, like I guess the money is kind of the problem there. Where it's like
Yeah.
like I don't know if their main strategy is still to do this in third world countries. I've also seen them in like malls in Germany, for example. So like, don't quote me on this. But yeah, okay, interesting. The like we all learned something. But I think to bring it back to the main conversation, to kind of close this topic of conversation, the 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 question that Danny had earlier is like, okay, why do some chains pay more in L1 fees and some chains pay more in blob fees as like the distribution of percentage? And the answer to that seems to be the more valuable searchers, or like the more kind of opportunities for MEV there is on the chain, and the higher the transaction volume in general. So like the more I would generally say DeFi activity there is, because that usually is like, okay, that's actually a block space that has high time sensitivity. The more the, I don't know, like the more fees are going to be paid on the chain, so like the chain can actually make revenue. So like turning yourselves into a DeFi chain, where people are incentivized to pay priority fees, is probably a good idea. Okay, I see knots all around. All right. So with that, we can actually. I mean, do we? Can we like do we have any words to the current topic of like who's ETH aligned? What is happening here? Like how do all of these ETH like layer 2, like how, like I don't know, was it a good idea to create blob space? Who's ETH aligned? Like who's paying the rent? Who's not paying the rent? Like does anyone have a hot take here?
I mean, sounds like the base rollup are the most ETH aligned, but they're not making money. It's a bad business, and why would anyone want to do that? I do want to point out another thing is like I think all the OP stack chain right now are having profit sharing with Optimism. So like the amount of revenue you see from base, 30% are paid to Optimism. So, but I mean beyond the base, there is no other L2 really having much to pay. So
Is it 30%?
I believe so.
I thought it was lower.
Wasn't
but
there
maybe-
like a first draft that was like 30%, but then they retracted that article and only turned out to be like 10% or whatever?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's lower now, or it's like either 15% of the revenue or
Yeah.
some other fixed value, I think. Or
like 5% of profits, or
yeah, exactly.
yeah, something like this. But
But
it is as big of a contributor, I think, to like the Optimism Foundation treasury as Optimism is, despite only giving like a percentage, whereas like Optimism gives a higher percentage, but I'm not sure if it's the full amount. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a big contributor to the Optimism treasury.
Okay, so it is defined as 2.5% of the chain's total revenue or 15% of its on-chain profits, where the on-chain profit is defined like the same as grow the pie. Fee revenue minus layer 1 gas fees. I don't know if this includes blob fees.
yes, it's included.
Okay.
So
I just want to say, like, regardless, like, I mean, that kind of makes the the OP stack chain OP aligned. So maybe we should do something similar to Ethereum, and that's again like the tariff idea.
but I have a hot take here, and I think it ties back to your point. Should we maybe tax? Should we put some tariffs on these layer twos? And honestly, I think we shouldn't. I think Ethereum should play the long-term greedy play. And what I mean by that is, I feel like it's unclear at the moment for layer twos, can they really scale with Ethereum? And we should make block space as cheap as possible. We should increase the blob size target so layer twos can really build on Ethereum. And once they are actually on Ethereum, they are much more sticky to Ethereum. And I feel like in the long term, that will give so much more value back to Ethereum than prioritizing short-term gains at the moment. So I think EIP 4844, the introduction of the blobs on Ethereum, is a good thing. Sure, in the short term, we are losing revenue, but I think it is good because we are maintaining a long-term greedy strategy here.
Yeah, I think the usually this complaint also stems from comparison to Solana. It's like the monolithic big L1 versus Ethereum, which is going the L2 route. And I do see that L2s in the long term are going to be probably better. It's just so hard right now because we're like only a step of the way in there, and fragmentation is horrible, and UX is really bad, and they're not really collaborating as much as we would like, maybe. But I think it's like those are issues that are being worked on. I don't know what the eventual turnaround will be on like how we can kind of abstract all chains. But if you think about like a protocol's point of view, owning your own stack on every level is probably a good way. So you can customize to your very like what you need for your specific application. You basically app chains, and there's probably L2s that are better catered to DeFi stuff. Some are better to for catering to NFT trading and all this. So I think it's pretty cool to see experiments stemming out and seeing different chains do different things. And hopefully at some point we'll they'll be working together a lot more, especially on interrupt.
All right, but quickly just inserting here, the alternative would be, okay, I use alternative DA solutions like Eigenlayer or Celestia. And Lorenz, your point is basically ETH should stay cheap, because otherwise people are just gonna leave. They're gonna be like, this is way too expensive to run. Base could say like, okay, we're just gonna post to EigenDA. I don't care about you guys. Users don't seem to really care about economic security anyways. So I might as well just I don't know. Yeah, turn my back to you.
So what you can see here is the data posted to Ethereum. And originally, all the layer twos had to post to calldata. And that was very expensive. And you can see that it was like, it caused high gas fees on Ethereum. And there was really a limit of how much data you could post to calldata. And then Ethereum EIP 4844 went live with the blobs. And that enabled Ethereum to throughput much more data. And now, ever since the blobs went live, Ethereum is now almost 3xing as much data throughput as it was. And you can actually see now it's stalling again because we are reaching the gas or like the blob target. But I think this trend will continue if we let it. And if we let it continue, I feel like there will be so much more developers, chains building on Ethereum because of the availability of this cheap block space. So yeah.
Okay, just to quickly run through the numbers. Can you quickly deselect Celestia again? Thank you. I think it seems like Ethereum call data peaked out. So before EIP 4844, we basically had like at most 1 gigabyte a day posted for the period of a couple of months. And nowadays we are posting 2.5 gigabytes. So that's a 2.5 increase from the maximum of the call data. And of course, the call data was really, really expensive for all of these OP stacks or like in general for layer twos. So we've brought the cost of blobs down, the cost of posting data to Ethereum down, which now has led to a proliferation of rollups. Which we can also just like, this is like a very felt experience, right? Like all of us are like, how the hell, like there's so many layer twos that I can't even keep up anymore. And this is like very much an effect of that, right? Where it's like, okay, now I don't need to burn through my treasury to just post this call data on ETH, but rather I can post blobs for like be profitable while posting blobs, or like it's basically cost neutral for me to do this. And my users have very cheap transactions. Actually the users are mostly carrying the costs, even for Optimism when they were paying as much call data. It's just like transaction costs on all layer twos really went down since we have blob data.
Am I looking at this basically like what Celestia is doing is what Lorenz was thinking Ethereum should have done, where I'm seeing that they are posting even more data than blobs, like 800 gigabyte compared to Ethereum's 600, and yet people paid around 100K. Meanwhile, for Celestia, meanwhile they paid like 13 million for blobs. So the Celestia blobs is like even cheaper. It's like basically free. Oh, I don't know if maybe it's even subsidized. I don't know. Like they're trying to get all these L2s to shift over to Celestia, I guess. That's crazy.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you can really see how Celestia offers just so much better scaling solutions to these layer twos. So, I mean, if you are a new layer two, where would you build? Would you build on Ethereum blobs with a already full blob target? Not really, right? You wanna post as much data as you want, right? And especially Celestia also offers basically, okay, it's not basically, but pretty much stable rate on how much fees you pay per megabyte. And I feel like that's very, very compelling for a new layer two. We know we can scale with Celestia and we pay always the same rate. And I think for that reason, we will see a lot of new chains actually use LDAs compared to Ethereum blobs if we don't scale Ethereum blobs enough in the short term.
Looks like the biggest adopter on Celestia who has posted the 700 gigabyte out of the 870 is Eclipse. So I think it's are they a eigenlayer competitor, I believe, or no?
No, Eclipse is it's an SVM L2.
Okay.
I think it has the most transactions of any layers right now, more than Solana for sure. But I don't know. I don't even know what those transactions are, to be honest. But I just know the amount is higher. That's just as much as I know for Eclipse.
I know there's a game where you tap a cow, and I think that does 90% of the block space on Eclipse. So
okay,
yeah.
Good thing they're not paying anything for that. I think companies should be careful to build, like the PE ratio of Celestia is absolutely ridiculous. Like they're making 120K in revenue for a market cap of 3.5 billion fully diluted. So it's also, maybe you should, like, I mean, DA layers are kind of interchangeable and you could probably switch over to another DA layer. But if you want to build for something that's around for the long term, maybe maybe Ethereum as a DA layer is more. But blobs are also transit. So like if you just consider like I just need a solution for this problem right now, and I don't care about anything else, then Celestia is fine at the moment. And it's like, is it enough security? Probably. Lorenz, do you want to talk about this Twitter thing you just posted in the chat?
Yeah, sure. So that's true. I mean, at the moment, $100,000 for such a valuable chain for Celestia is, it's nothing. But if you consider that almost 60% of Celestia's blob space, or like data they store, is just a cow tapping game. Now imagine if that scales, right? And here I actually brought a little tweet here I can share with you guys. So this tweet by David, he looked into the data and did some math. If Celestia continues to scale like it does at the moment, and because currently they transact around 8 megabytes per second, if they increase that to around 1 gigabyte per second, with a 1 second block time, they would be making $2 billion at current fee levels per year. So that really puts it into perspective that we are just at the beginning of really all these DA solutions. So if we can really scale that 100,000x, then all these DA solutions make sense. And in the large numbers, right, there's also large revenue being driven back to these data availability solutions, including Ethereum blobs. So I feel like going more broader and really capturing as much storage as possible, or as much data storage, can really increase the overall revenue compared to going for like a smaller market and paying higher fees there. That makes sense.
Yeah, early days. Maybe I'm the guy who predicted that the internet is just a transient phenomena and it's all gonna fade into nothingness. Yeah, a lot of these technologies are very overvalued in space. So like we're not gonna. I don't know. I take that back, I guess.
The question is, can they really scale? Right? Will the layer 2s build on Celestia? That's the true question you have to ask here.
Yeah. I see. So yeah, with that, I think that's a lot of insights into L2 economics, and maybe, but you guys are doing a lot of other stuff. One of them being block space utilization, another being like you actually are like, we just pulled up some data on the data availability, and I think you guys are uniquely the only ones who actually have this data available. I think this was a really interesting conversation about the actual data that you guys are providing, and it showcased like in a fantastic manner what you guys are working on and why this is important, because it is important to get this data right. But then it's like, okay, who actually pays the bills for this? Because like this is a tragedy of the commons problem, right? Everyone needs this data, but nobody wants to fucking pay for anything. Like this should just be free. The data's out there. Aren't you guys like, can't you just get me an intern and like he can probably synthesize this somehow? And it's like, no, like this is actually, I don't know how many people work at growthepie.
So we are currently 8 people.
This actually takes 8 cracked engineers or researchers or whatever to implement something like this. So it's like you need salaries, you need server costs. If you're indexing all the raw transactions, that is a lot of it's not that many RPC costs since you're only doing the calls once. But like your servers, your Postgres instances, whatever, all needs to run somewhere. That all costs money. So maybe growthepie is a public good. So maybe if you could quickly explain like what's the thinking behind that, what's the current funding structure, and then also just like how does I think you guys are basically living from grant to grant, and there's probably like at best a 6-month runway or 10-month runway. I don't know about your internal economics. I don't know if you can talk about it, but maybe just like what's the felt experience?
Yeah, so we at growthepie, we consider ourselves a public good, and I think there's a lot of definitions on public goods, but in my opinion, a public good is either a resource, a protocol, or infrastructure that really focuses on being non-excludable, and also providing unrestricted use. So basically, anyone can use it, and whoever uses it can use it as much as they want without diminishing its availability to others. And for that reason, yeah, we open source everything at growthepie. So everything is on GitHub. All our mappings are shared publicly. And for example, the economics section we looked at earlier, we open sourced the whole mapping for that. And we don't really stop at even open sourcing. We actually try to implement it on different platforms. So, for example, you can go on Dune and use the spell rollup economics, and that will be based on the same mapping we show in our dashboard. So we really try to build something here that anyone can use, and yeah, everyone has a benefit from it. And I think, yeah, this free rider problem you mentioned is also not that easy to solve, right? I mean, everyone can benefit from it, but why would you care because you can get it for free, right? And that's a little bit of a unique thing working for public goods, because yeah, you don't really have a solid business model. So GrowThePie is basically, yeah, dependent a lot on supporters. So there's like retroactive public goods funding or Octans or Gitcoin, and they actively support these public goods to build out this infrastructure for everyone. And so it's more like, so people come together and vote, hey, who are actually deserving of our money? So we constantly have to make sure that we're actually building something that is actually valued. It doesn't really make money, right? We're not selling anything, but it needs to be valued by the user, so they vote for us in all of these grants and so on, so we get money. So it's kind of like it's a funny mechanism, but it has been working out quite well for us at the moment. So yeah, I think public goods, I think a lot of people see them as charities, right? Or like, but ultimately it's infrastructure for the good of everyone. And I think, yeah, whenever you guys want to support anything, go to these grant programs and yeah, look for your favorite projects and donate to them. I think that's really how you can help out public goods working in this space.
I think even better, you should encourage foundations and stuff to contribute to those public goods, especially if they're included in some way, because those are hard to maintain. And the other option is, they don't get funded, and eventually they get somewhere else and paywalled, and basically not really everybody wins anymore. So yeah, those are valuable, and if you value them, please make sure to pay it forward.
I mean, how has it been for you, Hildobi? I mean, you have also a lot of dashboards that are publicly available that are also public good, right? So like,
yeah, I started as a freelancer, so I was I mean, it was my job essentially to look for people funding my dashboards, and either you do this, but then you can only do a certain type of dashboard, which usually is focused on one protocol or one chain, stuff like this. But I think the more interesting dashboards tend to be the global outlook ones, which is basically what you guys are doing, and like comparing all L2s. Because if you don't have a comparison ground, I don't think it's as good. And luckily now I've joined Dragonfly, so I can I'm available. I'm allowed to do some of these public goods in my work time, and I try to make the best of it so I can contribute where I can. And I've also received some grants in the past, such as the EF1 from what was it? Sorry, Bangkok. That was great. A few wizards like me were made eligible. Growthepie as well, and yeah, I just hope to see more, especially funding those that don't have other funding sources. Those are really underlooked and underappreciated for what they do.
Yeah, I think the space is also honing in and kind of like culling the bad actors. I think for a long, like, the early retro PGF rounds or whatever, retro public goods funding, there was a bit of sketchy shit in there. There was like, I don't know, the allocations were sometimes a bit off, and I think also if you go through the long tail of whatever got funded on Gitcoin, it's like, I think there needs to be kind of like a Doge department that goes through that maybe and sees what of this makes sense and what not. There was a lot of like similar stories that now emerge from the U.S. government. But yeah, in general, it's like, yeah, if we can find mechanisms to sponsor these things which help the whole ecosystem. It is difficult, but it is much needed. And happy to hear that you guys are currently successful in this endeavor. Certainly very well deserved. I think this is probably has emerged as one of the best data websites, or the best data set website if you want to compare different layer 2 metrics. So yeah, super cool stuff. And then you are also, we didn't get to actually look into the block space metrics on Grow the Pie, but just very high level. Block space utilization is basically, okay, how much block space is being taken by different categories on the chain. So if we would look into base, I think it would kind of be like, okay, 30%, 40%, 50% are taken by DeFi contracts, then 20% are taken by token transfers, and I'm just making these numbers up. Don't believe me. But like, it's like different categories, like some block space is utilized by NFTs, some is utilized by games, some is utilized by DeFi, and so on and so on. And of course, in order to actually be able to make these assumptions, you need a labeling system. And Grow the Pie has kind of like faced this problem of like, hey, there's no labels. Like, how do we actually label shit? And Lorenz is currently working on a solution. So if you quickly want to give the 2-minute elevator pitch for Labels initiative.
Yeah, for sure. So currently in the data space, and I know there are a lot of data wizards listening to this podcast, so you definitely know how isolated the labels are. Some people store labels here, some other company have labels behind the paywall, some other have different mechanisms to label stuff. Everyone does it in a unique way. But this makes it very hard for like new people to come in and build upon already built systems, right? So you can't really scrape data from other sources because they are so different. And that's where the Open Labels Initiative comes in. It is a spin-out project from Grow the Pie, and it was funded through a small Ethereum Foundation grant. And what we do is we build first a standardized model. So a standardized way of storing labels. And now we are building a data pool or a label pool where anyone can contribute labels to in this standardized format and then retrieve labels from others. So it's basically like a sharing platform for labels in a standardized format. And we built that completely on-chain, so it's permissionless. It's a public good. Anyone can access it. Anyone can use it as they want. And by doing so, we really try to build up and make sure that the community is able to contribute to this labeling effort. And through that, we are currently hoping to build up such a big data set of labels that any data team can instantly plug into this data set and build amazing tooling or dashboards or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, we all have faced these struggles as data analysts. Dune as a whole has faced this struggle. It's really a shame that Etherscan has such a tight hold on labels, and Etherscan is absolutely not willing to budge on like sharing those. I think lots of people started to scrape Etherscan, and like there's like Arkham has labels and Dune has labels and Etherscan has labels, and it's like it's all these little islands, like you already said. And maybe to double tap on your things, if you say you have a data model, you're basically saying like, hey, there's a like certain schema in which we store labels. And then the data pool is kind of like, okay, now Dune has certain labels, so like we can upload them somewhere, and we can do, okay, this is now our part of the labels pool, and then we have I don't know, MetaMask or somebody else who's like maybe part of this initiative, and they also upload labels somewhere. And then you said, okay, you built this on chain. So maybe if you can double tap on that real quickly, like how can you, like, you certainly not gonna post them as calldata or blobs, but like, okay, how does this actually work?
Yeah, so we are utilizing the Ethereum attestation service contracts for that. And they basically provide smart contracts where you can attest to certain labels. And therefore, you can basically attest all your labels and anyone can access that. So it's really a permissionless system. And yeah, I think the great thing about this data pool is really that, yeah, anyone can plug into it, anyone can build their own tooling around it and contribute in whatever way they want. And there's no pressure. You can also just consume data. So it's like, it's a public good. Everyone can build on it. And yeah, I think we're really trying to solve the labeling problem here, right? And really save a lot of time, because all of these companies, right, all of the data companies, they have teams. I mean, Etherscan has like multiple full-time employers just labeling stuff. Imagine if we can like all streamline and work together on labeling contracts, how much time we could save in this Web3 space. And yeah, that's what we're really trying to get behind here.
Fantastic. Where can people learn more about the Open Labels Initiative or join the initiative?
Yeah, so the number one point is our GitHub. It's called the Open Labels Initiative. And in there, you can find all information on how to join our calls and how to contribute your labels to the data pool. So,
wait, is the EIS attestations and stuff, is that actually live?
Yeah, we actually launched a few weeks ago. We redid some stuff, but now, yeah, we are building tooling around it. So, GraphQL endpoints is already live. So, yeah, it's up and running.
Okay, so, let's fucking
exciting.
Go. So I can now go and attest to some, or like I can basically post data into this pool as Boxer, or if we, like, I don't know, if I could line the ducks internally, we could do this as Dune.
Yes.
Whether there's incentive for us to do that, I don't know. That's a different discussion, which I will not partake in. But yeah, very cool. So yeah, this was the run through what Grow the Pie does, what is in public good, and why should we fund them. And I'm sure there's also some donation address you can find on the Grow the Pie website. So if this podcast has amazed you with the data breath, please go and donate to your favorite public good project, which is hopefully now Grow the Pie. And yeah, amazing journey, Lorenz. I think I really appreciate what you do for the space. I think the standardization of all of these data points is like really, really painstaking, like exact work. It's fucking tough. It's reading a lot of documentation. It's a lot of like asking questions in random discords and like figuring shit out, because oftentimes these teams haven't even properly documented their stuff. So yeah, really, really appreciate all the work that Grow the Pie and you personally do. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Any last words anyone wants to share? Maybe Lorenz.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think, yeah, support your favorite public good, not just Grow the Pie. I feel like everyone is deserving.
Yeah, sounds good. You have listened to the Index podcast. Thank you so much for listening. As always, feedback is appreciated. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Crypto data wizards, come join us for the parade. From Bitcoin ETF to Solana meme coin trade, uncovering public secrets in the blockchain shade. Bad chiller, cherry picking liar, we call them out and set chart crime on fire. Index podcast, crypto data empire.